What's going on, everybody, and welcome back to another edition of Kyle on the Call Sports. I'm Kyle Russo. On today's show, what I want to talk about is how a former number one overall draft pick could be making his return to the National Football League. But before we get started, make sure to like the video and, of course, make sure to subscribe to my YouTube channel at Kyle on the Call Sports. Now, without further ado, let's get started. The former number one overall pick that I'm talking about is Cam Newton. And Cam Newton recently announced that on March 21st, 2023, which is today, that he will be throwing at Auburn's Pro Day. Now, Cam Newton hasn't played football in over a year and last appeared with the Carolina Panthers back in 2021. Cam Newton, throughout his 11-year career in the National Football League, 10 years spent with the Carolina Panthers, and 1 year spent with the New England Patriots, he had a lot of ups and a lot of downs in his career. Throughout the first couple years of his career with the Carolina Panthers, he appeared in 3 Pro Bowls in 2011, 2013, and in 2015. In 2015, Cam Newton also won the MVP. And in this MVP season, Cam Newton had absolutely stellar numbers. The Carolina Panthers went 15-1. He individually, as a passer, completed 58.5% of his passes, which is not great. However, he threw for over 3,800 yards. He threw 35 touchdowns, and his rushing numbers were electric. Cam Newton in 2015 rushed for 636 yards and 10 touchdowns. A total of 45 touchdowns Cam Newton was responsible for the Carolina Panthers. And in that 2015 season, not only would Cam Newton win the MVP, but the Carolina Panthers would go all the way to the Super Bowl, where they would face off in Peyton Manning's last year against the Denver Broncos, where the Carolina Panthers did lose that Super Bowl championship. Now, Cam Newton hasn't played football in over a year. He last appeared with the Carolina Panthers back in 2021, where he did not exit so great. At the age of 32, with the Carolina Panthers, he played in 8 games and started 5 of those games. In the games in which Cam Newton started, those 5 games all resulted in losses, and his numbers were not so great either. In that last season for Cam Newton, where the Carolina Panthers went 0-5 in the games he started, he had a 54.8% completion percentage, threw for 684 yards, and threw for 4 touchdowns. And as far as his rushing numbers go, Cam Newton rushed for 230 yards and 5 touchdowns with the Carolina Panthers. Cam Newton, throughout his career, has been an electric player. Standing at 6'5", 250 pounds, he has something that can't be taught, and that's his athletic and skilled ability, and makes him a threat, not only as a passer, but as a rushing quarterback. And that's something that he made a career out of over the course of his 11-year career. Cam Newton was one of the most dominant and athletic quarterbacks in the National Football League for about a decade. And when he signed with the New England Patriots back in 2020, you saw that as well. In that season, he may not have had the best outcome with the Patriots, going 7-8. However, in the rushing category alone, Cam Newton rushed for 592 yards and 12 touchdowns. However, the knock against Cam Newton has been something that's been a problem throughout his entire career, and that's been his ability to be an elite passer. And throughout his career, he's never had the best completion percentage. In fact, in his entire 11-year career in the National Football League, he's only had 4 seasons where he's had a completion percentage above 60%, which is not great for a starting quarterback in the National Football League. So passing has definitely been a struggle for Cam Newton throughout his career. And that, along with injuries, because injuries have plagued his career, especially the latter part of his career, some believe is part of the reason why he has not made a return to the NFL and why he did not play on a football team in the 2022-2023 season. However, with the news that he will be throwing at Auburn's Pro Day today, the question now begins, will Cam Newton make a return to the NFL? And Cam Newton, along with this announcement that he will be throwing at Auburn's Pro Day, also made a statement that there aren't 32 quarterbacks in the National Football League that are better than him. When I look at all 32 teams in the National Football League in regards to Cam Newton's statement, there is an argument to be made that Cam Newton definitely could be a starter on some teams. Some teams that come to mind are the Washington Commanders, which right now have Sam Howell, who has as far as I'm concerned, has never been a starter in the National Football League. I believe this is now his second year after being drafted by the Washington Commanders out of North Carolina. And they recently just signed Jacoby Brissett to a 1 year deal. Now, you're telling me, yes, Cam Newton is not a great passer. He has a career 59.9% completion percentage. But at the size that Cam Newton stands at 6'5, 250 pounds, and the athleticism that he has as a running quarterback, you're telling me that Cam Newton can't win you as many games, if not more, being the starting quarterback for the Washington Commanders, especially reuniting himself with Ron Rivera, his old coach with the Carolina Panthers, that helped him get to a Super Bowl back in 2015? I think there's an argument there. Another team to look at, the Atlanta Falcons. We look at the Atlanta Falcons right now, and they could use some quarterback help. Yes, they just signed Taylor Heineke, funny enough, the former Washington Commanders quarterback, to a 2 year contract. So they have Heineke, and they also have Desmond Ritter in his second year. But once again, just like the Commanders, I do believe there's an argument to be made that Cam Newton definitely could win you the same amount of games, if not more games, with his rushing ability for the Atlanta Falcons. Another team that comes to mind is the Baltimore Ravens. They have not worked out a long-term deal with Lamar Jackson, and backup Tyler Huntley is also a free agent. So being that, especially Lamar Jackson, while Lamar Jackson is a better passer, what makes him such an electric quarterback and such a star-studded quarterback is his running ability. You're telling me that Cam Newton, yes, Cam Newton is older and has dealt with many more injuries, but in an offense that's designed to feature the skills running wise and athleticism of Lamar Jackson, you're telling me that Cam Newton couldn't be a fit in that offense? Obviously, not to win more games or be as competitive as Lamar Jackson would be, but just as a replacement, as Baltimore right now doesn't necessarily have a long term answer at the quarterback position. I think there's an argument to be made that in a rushing offense, that Cam Newton would flourish. Again, once again, I don't want to say that Lamar Jackson and Cam Newton would put up these same numbers or would put up the same stat line or would put up the same amount of wins for the franchise. But in regards to being a fit in that offense, being that they do both play similar types of football, I do believe that there's an argument to be had that he could be a fit. And one of the final teams that I do think could also be a fit, which not a lot of people are talking about, not in regards to Cam Newton being a fit with this team, but just in regards to the quarterback situation with this team, is the San Francisco 49ers. The San Francisco 49ers had Brock Purdy, who was playing excellent football the second half of the season for the San Francisco 49ers, but he suffered an injury that will keep him out of most of next year. Trey Lance got hurt early on last season, and even if there is a timetable for his return, no one really knows yet what Trey Lance is at the NFL level, because in now I believe almost 3, if not 4 years, he hasn't necessarily gotten the opportunity because of guys like Jimmy Garoppolo starting most, if not all, games when healthy for the San Francisco 49ers. And with that being said, San Francisco 49ers lost Jimmy Garoppolo, cut ties with him after, I believe, a 6-year tenure with the 49ers, and he signs with the Vegas Raiders. The 49ers did as well bring in Sam Darnold on a 1-year deal. And yes, in a Kyle Shanahan offense, I think that he could be more successful at the NFL level than he was with the New York Jets, or more successful than what he was with the Carolina Panthers this past season. But you're telling me that Cam Newton couldn't potentially be a fit there as well? Being that, really, when you look at the career of Kyle Shanahan, really any quarterback in which he puts in that offense can play great football. So I think there's an argument to be made there. My point being, as this is breaking news, and Cam Newton saying that not only he's looking to make a return to the National Football League, but that there aren't 32 quarterbacks better than him. I think that across the National Football League, there are some arguments to be made that Cam Newton can be a starter in the National Football League. And if not a starter, definitely a backup. Because while there is an argument that Cam Newton is or is not better than 32 of the starting quarterbacks in the National Football League, there is definitely an argument that he is better than the 64 quarterbacks in the National Football League. And what that 64 number means is, obviously there's 32 starting quarterbacks in the National Football League, But being that each team would carry a backup quarterback, that number would then be 64, 32 plus 32. Each team carrying a backup quarterback, that number would get to 64. There is 100% an argument that Cam Newton should at least be a backup in the National Football League, if not a starter in the National Football League. I just listed a few teams in which I think can definitely use some starting help, like the Commanders, the Atlanta Falcons, like the San Francisco 49ers potentially, like the Baltimore Ravens potentially, if they cannot work out a long-term deal with Lamar Jackson or Tyler Huntley. So there definitely is an argument to be made. And there may be a greater argument, obviously a year off from football, but getting himself ready for this moment to once again prove himself, Cam Newton that is, why he does belong in the National Football League and can still play at a high level. But on that note, that'll do it on this edition of Kyle on the Call Sports. My name is Kyle Russo. Will Cam Newton make his return to the National Football League? Make sure to leave your comments down below. Make sure to like the video. And of course, make sure to subscribe to my YouTube channel at Kyle on the Call Sports. Thank you all for listening. Thank you all for tuning in. I hope you've enjoyed, and I'll see you in the next video.